The town of Adacrom was known for its busy marketplace and the sweet scent of freshly cooked meals that hung in the air. Every household had its own culinary secrets, but none could rival the cooking of Awani. She wasn't just any cook, she was the most sought-after chef in all of Adacrom. Her dishes were more than food, they were a spectacle, a blend of flavors that left anyone who tasted them wanting more. But something was different about Awani. Despite her fame, she was always distant, always quiet. Some said she never smiled, while others whispered that her recipes had dark roots. The elderly women in the town claimed she had learned her craft from her late mother, but the methods were said to be unnatural. One day, Awani received an invitation to prepare a feast for the town's chief, Nana Kwame. His birthday was approaching, and the town's most powerful and influential citizens would gather to celebrate. Everyone anticipated this event, eager to see what Awani would bring to the table this time. Rumor had it that she had been working on something special, something no one had ever tasted before. As the day of the feast approached, strange things began to happen in the town. Livestock went missing. Chickens, goats, and even a few cats vanished without a trace. People dismissed it at first, thinking it was the work of thieves, but the disappearances became more frequent and bizarre. The night before the feast, Mansa, the chief's youngest daughter, saw something chilling. From her window, she could see a shadowy figure sneaking through the marketplace. It moved swiftly, dragging a large sack behind it. Mansa rubbed her eyes, unsure if what she saw was real or just a trick of the moonlight. The day of the feast arrived, and excitement buzzed in the air. Awani entered the chief's palace with her head held high, carrying pots and pans covered with thick white cloths. The aroma that filled the hall was intoxicating, unlike anything anyone had ever smelled before. The guests, dressed in their finest clothes, could hardly wait to taste her creations. As the dishes were uncovered one by one, people gasped. The food looked fantastic. The colors were vibrant, the textures seemed almost magical, and the aroma was overwhelming. Nana Kwame, sitting at the head of the table, clapped his hands in approval. He gestured for the first dish to be served, his eyes gleaming with excitement. But as soon as the first bite touched his lips, something strange happened. The chief's smile faded. His hand trembled, and his eyes darted around the room as if he were searching for something. He swallowed hard, his face turning pale, but before anyone could react, he collapsed face-first into his plate. Panic erupted in the hall. People screamed, rushing to the chief's side, but it was too late. Nana Kwame was dead. The once joyful celebration turned into chaos. Guests abandoned their seats, and the palace guards rushed in, shouting orders. Awani stood at the corner of the room, her face expressionless. No one noticed her slip out quietly. The feast, which was meant to be a grand celebration, had turned into a nightmare. People began whispering that it was Awani's food that killed the chief. But what had she done? Was it poison, or something more deadly? Mansa, the chief's daughter, couldn't shake the image of the shadowy figure she had seen the night before. She decided to investigate. With her heart pounding in her chest, she followed her instincts and headed toward the marketplace, where she had seen the figure. There, behind one of the stalls, she found something that made her blood run cold. A deep pit had been dug behind the marketplace, hidden beneath an old rug. Inside the pit were the remains of the missing livestock. But what terrified Mansa the most were the strange symbols drawn in the dirt around the pit, symbols she had never seen before. She hurried back to the palace to tell the elders, but when she arrived, the mood had shifted. People were now talking in hushed tones about Awani's absence. She had vanished without a word, and no one knew where she had gone. Some said she had fled in guilt, while others believed she was hiding something far worse. The elders gathered in a circle, discussing what to do next. Fear and confusion filled the room. They decided to send a search party to find Awani, convinced that she held the key to the chief's sudden death. But as night fell, strange occurrences began to plague the town once more. Shadows danced in the streets, and whispers echoed through the air, though no one was there to speak them. Mansa, now more determined than ever, decided to take matters into her own hands. She couldn't shake the feeling that the strange symbols in the pit held the answer. But she needed help. She remembered an old woman who lived at the edge of town, Auntie Amma, a wise elder who was said to know things that others didn't. If anyone could decipher the meaning of the symbols, it would be her. With her heart racing and fear gnawing at her every step, Mansa made her way to Auntie Amma's home, hoping that the old woman could unravel the mystery behind Awani and the evil that seemed to be creeping into Adacrom. The tension thickens as the strange and ominous events surrounding Awani's feast unfold, leaving everyone questioning her true intentions. What did Mansa see, and how is it connected to the mysterious cook? Mansa's steps echoed in the quiet streets as she made her way to the edge of town, the cool night air doing little to calm her racing heart. The road ahead was dark, lit only by the light from her lantern. Auntie Amma, the old woman she was going to see, lived far from the village for reasons most people didn't dare to ask about. They said she had knowledge, ancient knowledge, and Mansa prayed that Auntie Amma would have answers to the strange symbols she had seen by the pit. As Mansa approached Auntie Amma's small hut, her hands trembled. The air felt thick, as though the night itself was watching her. She knocked on the door, and after a long, tense moment, it creaked open. Auntie Amma, with her wrinkled face and piercing eyes, stood in the doorway, as if she had been expecting her. "What brings you here at this hour, child?" Auntie Amma's voice was low, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. Mansa swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak. "It's about Awani and the feast. I found something strange. I think it's connected to her." Auntie Amma's eyes narrowed. She stepped aside, allowing Mansa to enter. The inside of the hut smelled of herbs and smoke. Strange objects hung from the ceiling, dried plants, animal bones, and charms that Mansa didn't recognize. "Tell me everything," Auntie Amma said, motioning for Mansa to sit on a low stool by the fire. Mansa recounted everything, from the feast, the chief's sudden death, to the pit she had found behind the marketplace, and the symbols drawn in the dirt. As Mansa spoke, Auntie Amma's expression grew more serious. When she finished, Auntie Amma leaned forward, her eyes sharp with understanding. "Those symbols," she said slowly, "are not from this world. They belong to a different kind of magic, one that binds the spirit to the flesh." Mansa got scared, her stomach twisting in knots. "What does that mean? Is Awani responsible for the chief's death?" Auntie Amma shook her head. "It's more complicated than that. Awani's food is enchanted, yes, but it's not simple poison. She doesn't kill with her hands. The food she cooks, it takes something from those who eat it. Their life force, their spirit. She uses it to grow her own power." Mansa's eyes widened in horror. "So, the chief?" Auntie Amma nodded. The chief was the final piece of her puzzle. His death was the sacrifice she needed to complete whatever dark magic she's been working on. Mansa's heart pounded. But why? Why would she do this? Auntie Amma stood up, pacing slowly. A long time ago, Awani's family was cursed. Her mother practiced forbidden magic, and in doing so, she condemned her bloodline. Every generation since has been bound to this dark path, feeding off the lives of others to survive. Awani is no different, but she's taken it further than anyone else. She wants more than just survival, she craves power. Mansa's mind raced, trying to process everything. But what can we do? How can we stop her? Auntie Amma turned to face Mansa, her eyes filled with a grim determination. There's only one way. Awani's magic is tied to the ingredients she uses in her cooking. If we can destroy her source, we can break her power. But it won't be easy. Mansa clenched her fists. Tell me what I need to do. Auntie Amma hesitated for a moment before walking to a shelf and pulling out a small pouch filled with a dark, powdery substance. This, she said, handing it to Mansa, is a sacred herb. It's the only thing that can undo her magic. But you must get close to her food. Sprinkle this into her cooking, and it will destroy everything she's built. Mansa nodded, feeling a surge of courage despite the fear gnawing at her insides. She stood up, ready to leave, but Auntie Amma grabbed her arm, her expression grave. Be careful, Mansa. Awani is no ordinary woman. She will sense what you're trying to do. And if she catches you... Auntie Amma's words hung in the air, unfinished, but the meaning was clear. If Awani found out, Mansa's life would be in grave danger. Determined but terrified, Mansa left Auntie Amma's hut and made her way back to the village. By the time she arrived, the streets were very silent. The once lively town of Adacrom felt haunted, as if the darkness had crept into every corner. Mansa headed straight for the marketplace, where she knew Awani's kitchen was hidden in the back. She crouched behind a stack of crates, watching as the dim light from Awani's kitchen flickered through the windows. The smell of cooking filled the air once again, though this time it felt wrong, like the scent of decay masked by spices. Mansa's heart pounded as she waited for the right moment. She had to be quick, sneak in, sprinkle the herb, and escape before Awani could sense her presence. As she waited, Mansa couldn't help but wonder where Awani had been since the feast. The entire town was searching for her, but it was clear now that she hadn't left. She had stayed in the shadows, continuing her dark work. Finally, the opportunity came. Awani left the kitchen, likely to fetch more ingredients. Mansa knew this was her only chance. She slipped into the kitchen, her hands shaking as she pulled out the pouch Auntie Amma had given her. The room was filled with pots and pans, each one simmering with mysterious concoctions. The air was thick with the stench of something foul, something unnatural. Mansa moved quickly, sprinkling the herb into each pot, praying that it would work. As she reached the final pot, a chill ran down her spine. She felt a presence behind her, a cold, dark energy that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Slowly, she turned around. There, standing in the doorway, was Awani. Her eyes burned with a hatred so deep, Mansa could hardly breathe. "You think you can stop me?" Awani's voice was calm, but there was a deadly edge to it. "You think you can undo what I've spent years building?" Mansa's heart raced. She took a step back, but her legs felt weak. Awani took a step forward, her eyes locked onto Mansa's. "Now, you will see the true power of the evil cook," Awani hissed, raising her hand. Mansa's body froze as Awani's hand rose, her fingers curled as though gripping an invisible force. The air around them seemed to grow heavy, filled with an unnatural pressure that made it hard to breathe. Mansa could feel it, the dark energy gathering, swirling in the room, and centering on Awani. Her eyes, once human, now glowed with an eerie light, reflecting the evil power she had been hiding all along. "I told you not to meddle," Awani said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the air like a blade. "Now, you will pay." Mansa backed up, her mind racing for a way out. Her fingers gripped the pouch of herbs Auntie Amma had given her, but she had already used most of it. She had no weapon, no protection against Awani's dark magic. The only thing left was the small amount of powder in her hands. "I won't let you continue this evil," Mansa managed to say, though her voice trembled with fear. Awani's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Evil? You speak of things you don't understand. This power isn't evil, it's survival. You and your village have been feeding me, sustaining me, and now, you want to destroy what keeps me alive." Mansa felt a wave of nausea as the truth sank in. All those years Awani had cooked for the village, offering delicious meals, she had been draining the life from them bit by bit. Her food had never been a gift, it had been a trap. And now, with the chief's death, her final plan was in motion. Before Mansa could respond, Awani's hand shot forward, and a powerful force hit her like a gust of wind. She was thrown across the kitchen, crashing into the wall. Pain shot through her body, but she forced herself to stand. Awani was moving toward her, slowly, confidently, knowing she had the upper hand. Desperation filled Mansa's chest. She had to think fast. Her eyes darted to the pots of food she had already poisoned with Auntie Amma's herbs. It was her only chance. If Awani's power came from her cooking, then the corrupted food might weaken her. Mansa grabbed the nearest pot and, with all her strength, hurled it at Awani. The hot stew splashed across the floor, and some of it hit Awani's arm. She recoiled with a sharp hiss, her eyes widening in shock. "You dare," Awani began, but she was cut off as Mansa grabbed another pot and threw its contents toward her. This time, the herb-laced food soaked Awani's legs and feet. She screamed, a sound that wasn't entirely human. Her body convulsed, and the dark energy around her flickered like a dying flame. Mansa didn't stop. She grabbed every pot, every pan, and threw the poisoned food at Awani, hoping, praying that it would be enough. With each splash of stew and soup, Awani's power seemed to drain away. Her once fearsome presence shrank, and her glowing eyes dimmed. Finally, with one last scream of rage, Awani collapsed to the ground. Her body twitched, and the room fell silent. The thick, oppressive air that had filled the kitchen lifted, and Mansa felt the weight on her chest ease. She approached cautiously, her heart still racing. Awani lay motionless, her body drenched in the very food that had once given her strength. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her face twisted in pain. In a matter of seconds, the once powerful and feared cook was no more. Mansa fell to her knees, gasping for breath. It was over. Awani, the evil cook who had terrorized their village with her cursed meals, was finally gone. The dark magic that had claimed so many lives had been destroyed. The sun was beginning to rise as Mansa left the kitchen, her body sore and her mind weary. She had saved her village, but at what cost? As she made her way home, the streets were still eerily quiet. The people had no idea what had transpired in the night, and perhaps it was better that way.